My name is Ashley Legenzoff and welcome to the studio. Today we have something a bit different to show you rather than our regular interviews and music productions. I have the special honor of getting to interview our retirees, Mr. Croom, Coach Youngblood, Mrs. Roth, and Miss Playa. I hope this tribute does their many years of teaching justice. Please enjoy.
I got into teaching and coaching basically because I was an athlete in high school and went to Auburn and played baseball and ended up having an arm injury. I was drafted out of high school by Cincinnati Reds and chose to go to Auburn and ended up having an arm injury, so I just wanted to stay in athletics, and that's kind of how it evolved from there.
Well, interesting story. I started out my freshman year of college as a psychology major, and I knew after half a semester in my general psychology class that was not what I wanted to do. So I went to my advisor and I said, this is not for me. What am I going to do? And he said, how did you do on your ACT? And I said, I'm as good as everybody else. He said, but which section did you score the highest in? And I said, English and reading. And he said, well, then there's only one thing to do. Why don't you become an English teacher? And I said, when I was a little girl, I used to love playing school and being the teacher. Had a chalkboard in my room. My mom bought me a little grade book. So I went from there, and it was meant to be.
It's not a very noble beginning. I was a news reporter, and I was working 60, 70-hour weeks, and my children were very little, and they were in daycare. And I saw another teacher off for the summer with her kids, and I was teaching Sunday school at the time, and I really loved it, and I really loved the interaction with the kids and felt like I had a gift for it. And so I went back and got my master's degree in teaching and started teaching 25 years ago in Shelby County Schools.
I got into teaching somewhat by accident. For a number of years I'd worked in the retail business, and my company had gone out of business, and my wife had told me that, well, you always liked teaching Sunday school, and I was a Boy Scout leader, why don't you just try substitute teaching? So in the fall of 1999, I became a substitute teacher at the middle school. And I sat down that first day at the middle school in Miss Pat Romano's class, and I'll never forget her. And you have this feeling that comes across for you where you feel like God's speaking to you, this is where you ought to be, and I knew it. I knew I had to do this. So in January of 2000, I got a job as a paraprofessional, and I started going to school at the University of Montevallo. My original degree was in fine art. I was actually taught to be a painter and a sculptor, not graphic artist, but a traditional artist and painter. And for a number of years I'd worked in a retail business actually doing that sort of thing, believe it or not. And so I had to go back to school, and my minor had always been history, and I wanted to expand upon that. So I was going to Montevallo and going to history classes, and I wound up having the equivalent of 2 undergraduate degrees and at the time, and I really love learning history, at a higher level. And so I was able to complete that in 2003, and then I became a teacher at Oak Mountain Middle School. I started teaching in the fall of 2003.
As a teacher, my favorite achievements come when I hear from students after they've graduated and moved on, and they let me know how they're doing, and I can see their successes that they have had. And even though I probably have nothing to do with their successes, it still makes me feel a little bit inside like I might have had a tiny bit of that. I've gotten Teacher of the Year one year, and I've gotten other awards like that, but nothing feels as good as when I hear from a student after they've graduated and they let me know how they're doing.
Well, I received some honors here, much to my surprise. I got Teacher of the Year, which stunned me. Yeah, it did stun me because it's where your fellow teachers think enough of you, but it was very humbling getting that. But probably the one that stunned me the most was being asked to be part of Beauty and the Beast. And to this day, I'm still shocked about it, but it is a beautiful memory I wouldn't trade for anything.
Relationships, getting to know people, students, adults, the relationships that I have built over the 30 years of teaching and coaching are everlasting. There are just certain people that have made impacts on you throughout the year, and you don't forget those students. You don't forget who they are.
I sat down and figured out the other day that I've taught close to 3,000 students since I became a teacher. And if you want to add, when I was a paraprofessional working with special needs students, you could add more in there. And that's not as many as other people have been teaching 30 plus years. But the idea about having that many students in the classroom and trying to get them to have a love and appreciation for history, that overall is a proud achievement. I've tried my best. I haven't always been successful, but I've tried my best with it. And so when they come in here, they can just be immersed in history and try to have an appreciation for it.
There's been so many proud achievements. When you've taught this long and you've taught this many students over the years, an average of anywhere from 130 to 150 students a year at some point on your roster. There's many, many memories. I think my favorite memory is when you have a reluctant student or a student who's not really very confident, and you want them to practice the English language arts strand. You want them to practice writing and reading and presenting and talking and speaking. And then they actually do that, and they get to see that they are able to do just as well as somebody else if they go through the steps.
You know, that question there is favorite memories. I think we would be here all day talking about that. I would simply say that my memories of this is working for the people that I've worked for here and interacting with the students that have been here. It has been 23 years here at Oak Mountain. There are certain teachers, certain students that made life easy. There were people that were always there for you, always worked with you, and that in itself has been a blessing.
In the fall of 2019, Mrs. Strickland approached me, actually in the copier room down here, and said they had this idea to have me as part of this play, musical. And I thought, okay, other teachers had done that where you just kind of walk out on stage and you wave, everybody applauds, and that's it. When she gave me a copy of the script and I read it and I came back here the next day, I said, this is a lead role. She goes, yeah. And she and Zouchin and Bender apparently had, as I was told, kind of came up with this. And I talked to my wife about it, and she thought it was a really bad idea. She said, those kids are going to be making fun of you. And she said, what do they want you to play? And I said, Maurice. And she said, Maurice is a doofus. So anyway, she came around to agreeing to it, and I talked to a couple of people, and I thought I'd try it. But they were very, very patient with me, and I said, the kids wouldn't be making fun of me. I said, I know this group. It's not like that. And so Amy, I put myself under her tutelage and under Zouchin's and under Dr. Bender, and they work with me in every way possible. But I had the absolute time of my life. I wouldn't trade that for anything. And it's my rise and fall in being in the theater. But I really enjoyed myself.
Favorite memories, though, outside the classroom, but at Oak Mountain, are taking many, many student groups to Europe for a living classroom. I think over time I've taken 4 or 5 trips with students, and just to get to see them experience the world. And then my greatest joy, too, is seeing them continue to travel and continue to, go and see things and experience different cultures and stuff.
The scariest moment driving a student would probably be pulling up to a traffic light that is green and the student stops, and I ask them why they're not going, and they say, because I don't know what color the light is on the other side.
There have been just lots of different things, but I think my very favorite memory involves a student. His name was Jay, and I'll never forget. We were sitting in this classroom, and I was standing at the front of the room teaching my little heart out. It appeared that the students knew exactly, I don't remember what it was about, but they knew, they were with me. They were asking questions, they were raising their hands, they were commenting. And Jay raised his hand, and I'm thinking, oh, Jay usually doesn't get involved, so he's going to. And he raised his hand, and I said, Jay, what are you going to contribute? He said, I just have one question. I said, well, let me hear it. He said, very seriously, Miss Roth, who's in charge in hell while you're here with us? And while it probably was a little inappropriate, it was all I could do not to laugh out loud. So I had to get a quick comeback, and I just said, well, Jay, I can be in 2 places at one time.
So, you know, again, it's a blessing to be here. It's a blessing to work with the people here at this school. So it's not like I'm retiring, so I'm still going to be doing something very active here at the school, but outside.
Well, I'm only 56, so I'm not quite ready to be drawing Social Security, so I plan to take time off until October, and then in October I will probably get another job, but I also coordinate and direct weddings on the weekends in my free time. So I've got a few weddings coming up, and I probably will devote a little more time to the weddings. And maybe I would like a part-time job where I just answer the phone somewhere and say, hello, how can I help you?
Well, I'm super excited to retire. As you know, I love to travel. So the first thing right out the gate, Mr. Ply and I have a cruise planned to Alaska. And that's been on my bucket list for many, many years. And so I've researched it, and I'm very excited. And did you know it takes just as long to get to Alaska as it does to Europe, and sometimes longer? So we're going to fly into Vancouver and out of Anchorage, and one of the flights times is 9 hours. So anyway, we'll see what happens, but I'm very excited about it. I love to garden. I have a beautiful yard with lots of flowers and plants, and it's a very expensive collection. My husband fusses at me quite frequently about all the flowers that I buy, but I can't help it. When I go to Lowe's or Home Depot or anywhere, I'm just always picking up a flower or a pot or something and planting. I love to get my hands dirty. It makes me feel happy, and it brings me peace. I also cannot wait to read for pleasure. I love to read. That's why I was a journalist. That's why I became an English teacher. And I love talking about reading and books with my students. And I'm very excited about reading just for pleasure and picking up a book and having the time to focus on it and give it the attention that it needs. Having taught British Lit for so long, I like complex stories, but I also find that with all the grading that I have and all the planning that I have, I don't have a lot of time to invest in it. So I'm excited about that. The main thing that I'm excited about is spending time with my grandchildren. I have a 7th grandchild that's due in August. At the very end of August, we would already be back in school, and it's a little girl, and her name's going to be Caroline, which is my middle name. So I'm very excited to spend time with her, to spend time with my daughter in Atlanta, and her little 2-year-old son, Whit, and my little new granddaughter, Caroline.
I like doing a lot of historical research, and over the last few years I've been writing and doing history research at Franklin D. Roosevelt State Park over in Georgia, and at the Little White House in Georgia. It's near my hometown, Columbus, and it's where Franklin D. Roosevelt died. And I actually give presentations on the history of the park with the Civilian Conservation Corps, and I've been working, will continue to do that, trying to work with a lot of really high-level historians, and I've actually been doing it here in some of the state of Alabama, working with some historians at Oak Mountain State Park, and I'm got sort of involved in a project where they're doing a film for Alabama Public Television about the Civilian Conservation Corps. So I've got all that lined up. Plus, probably more importantly, I get to spend time with my wife in retirement, because she retired a few months ago, and I've got 3 beautiful grandchildren I want to try to spend as much time with as I possibly can. That I'm looking forward to. But I will tell you this, and it's bittersweet. It's like I know it's my time to teaching has come to an end, but I will miss y'all, all the students and the faculty here. You know, there's ups and downs and everything, but teaching is a privilege, and it has consumed me. It's like what I knew what God wanted me to do, and I mean that with all sincerity. And it's like you know it in your heart, and that I'll miss. I'll miss the interactions, because y'all keep me young, believe it or not. Maybe the gray hair may confuse you on that. But that I will miss and everything.
I want my students to remember me as being the teacher that was consistent with following the rules, but the teacher that held them accountable and wanted them to become better people. To me, that's almost as important as the curriculum and the novels that we read and the books that we read. I feel certain, as chairperson of the English department, I'm pretty sure my department will remember me as being the person who would say anything, no filters asked, and if you don't want me to give you my opinion, don't ask.
Ms. Roth has impacted my life because of how she comes to school every single day. She always has a smile on your face, and she can, no matter the situation you're in, she can always put a smile on your face, and that's really helped me throughout high school.
Well, okay, so I came to Oak Mountain in 2015. She's the head of the department, and the two of us were going to work close together with 11th grade English. So basically, you know, she impacted every part of the job because she would help me plan the year and get me acclimated to the job and the students and everything, and she was just terrific.
I hope a person who was helpful, someone who was always there for you, someone that when needed help, that I was that person to be there to help you regardless of what that situation was. Again, I was taught growing up that a person that was in need was a person that you always helped, regardless of what it was, and that's just, I hope that's kind of my legacy in a way, that I've always been that person.
To know Tommy, our coach Youngblood, he's just, ever since I guess we got to know each other at Clay Chalkville years ago, we were, he was a head baseball coach, I was assistant softball coach, and we would talk some there, but when we got here, we had to both basically build the baseball, softball fields from scratch. And he could have easily just said, I'm gonna go do my thing and you go do yours, but he's the kind of guy who wants everybody to be successful. So he worked with me and we basically built the fields together. I mean, every day we worked on one thing for baseball, we worked on it for softball as well. And that's how both fields got done. It's one of those things that, not just as a friend, but I mean, as just a coworker, just outstanding. I mean, he really helped me get through those times as we were building the fields and developing our programs together. So,
Coach Youngblood, tidbits about Tommy. Tommy has two things that come to mind that other people may not know about him. And the first is he's an amazing cook. He is a master griller, and his ribs are to die for. They taste so yummy, they're incredible, they hardly have any sauce on them, and they're just perfect. And so I am hoping, even though he's retiring, that he'll still wander back and bring us some ribs so that we can chow down, because they're really great. The second tidbit about Tommy that you may not know is that he works with wood, and he has made some of the most incredible cutting boards I've ever seen. So if you're in the market and you need a cutting board, he's the man that can make it.
He's impacted my life because my family has known him forever, since I was little, and he's always been so nice and sweet. And I've really looked up to him, and he's really inspired me. You know, he does pick on me, and we have fun and all that.
Tommy Youngblood, Coach Youngblood, has impacted my life in positive ways. He is a kind man with a gentle heart, and I think if I have to think back through Coach Youngblood, one takeaway I would think is he's an amazing hard worker, and the word commitment comes to mind. I've never seen somebody so committed to his job and what he does, and I have admiration for that. I have the utmost respect for him and how he's been all these years committed to Oak Mountain High School, to the students, to the staff, to the teachers, and just how hardworking he is. He is committed to Oak Mountain. He bleeds red and blue, and I'm thankful for the job he's had and the successful job he's done here, and he's going to be greatly missed.
I hope, and I've thought a lot about this because we've had a couple of other events for retirement where we were asked that question, and I'm just going to go with what I feel like is the most important thing, that I've left a good lasting impression, a good positive lasting impression on my students. In the past, it's always made me so happy to go to a restaurant or a store and run into a student who comes up and greets me. And just recently, as a matter of fact, I was in Party City over here at the Brook Highland Plaza, and a boy came up to me and, Miss Playa, and gave me a hug, and I was like, and then he kind of said who he was, and I was like, oh, yeah, and you always remember students. The funniest thing, you remember them right here, because their weight will change, their height will change, their hair will change, their facial hair will change, but their eyes don't change. And you remember them as the type of student that they were. It's the strangest thing. For all my years, I can remember that. I run into students all the time. But he said something that really made a great impact on me. And he said, Ms. Playa, I remember you so well because you always cared. He said, you always cared. He said, you always tried so hard to give us a good experience and make us care. And so I hope that that's my legacy. I hope that students know that I do care, that I tried to make it interesting, to teach them life lessons, to make real world connections. I hope that that's my legacy.
The way that Ms. Playa has impacted my life is I've learned a lot of lessons in her class, not just about English, but like about just things like learning how to be responsible and all those sort of things about like your career in the future and all of that. And also, she's made sure that I know MLA format by heart by now. And it was just really fun getting to learn about Shakespeare and all those parts of the world.
You know, I don't think that she knows the answer to this, and it's probably something that she would never suspect. But one thing that I've learned from Jackie, especially over the last couple of years, is it is really important to take time out to spend with your family and to cherish those moments that you have with your family. I know, and anybody that knows Jackie knows that, you know, her husband's had some health issues, and she has been there, you know, a fierce supporter of him and has truly been there for him, and that's really inspiring. I know a lot of people don't take family relationships maybe as seriously as they should, and just, you know, to me it's just been really awe-inspiring to see her there supporting her husband and to be there for her family. I know her family is truly very important to her, and my family is important to me, and that has caused me as a person to just kind of take a step back and maybe realize, focus on the positive, focus on the good things that you have, and cherish them and take advantage of every opportunity that you have with your family.
Ms. Ply has impacted my life by teaching me that even though you're in high school and you have a bunch of stress, in the future when you step back and look at it, your stress and everything is just going to be like a tiny little drop of water in the ocean. So don't let a tiny drop ruin your entire high school.
I can only hope that people who have had my class will walk out of here with some appreciation for history. Like I tell the kids, I don't care whether they pass the AP test or not, but if you can come out of here and you can look me in the face and say, I learned something, that's the accomplishment right there. Not a grade, not a GPA, not whether or not you made a perfect score on a test, but that run fact right there. When you walk out of here, did you learn something?
Mr. Kroom is like an honorary grandfather to me. He even wrote that in my yearbook, actually. I love him so much. I feel like I've grown up with him a lot, and he's been there for a lot of some of my biggest life moments, some of the hardest moments in my life, and he's just kind of always been there for me.
Mr. Kroom has impacted my life by making me more open. Before, like when I came in as a freshman, I was very quiet. I never really talked to my teachers or anything like that. But near the latter half of my freshman year, Mr. Kroom and I started to form a really good relationship. And that kind of like, since then, just unthinkingly, I try to form and make those connections with my teachers. And I know I wouldn't have if it wasn't because of him.
You know, a couple of years ago, the impact I would say that Mr. Kroom has made on my life is, I did not predict it. A couple of years ago when we were doing Beauty and the Beast, we were sitting at a restaurant, Mr. Zouchin and I, and we were talking about what we were gonna do for Beauty and the Beast, and he suggested, hey, what if we got an adult to play Maurice? And he suggested Mr. Kroom. I didn't really know Mr. Kroom very well. And so when we brought him in the process, I only knew him by reputation. The freshmen loved him as a history teacher. And it really changed the way that I do things, having another adult in the room observing, having to explain the process, because he was not passive participant playing Maurice in Beauty and the Beast. He had books, binders, diagrams. He wanted to know why I did everything I did. And so it really strengthened some of my practices, and it also, you know, he's like, I call him my work dad. He's a really close friend. He's like family to me at this point. And so he's just also just brightened my everyday life at this school. I'm gonna miss him a lot.